Welcome to This Got Me Thinking, where clarity comes from conversations and the connections that spark from it. I am your host, Chris LaFay, and today I had the pleasure of chatting with Andrew Graft. Andrew discovered something that a lot of us people pleasers learned the hard way, that trying to get everyone to approve of your value inside of an organization often has the exact opposite effect. And in his case, it took 6 months of struggle at an agency where his desperation to fit in was actually pushing people away. He realized that one of the core tenets of authentic leadership isn't just about being what others want you to be. It's about understanding how others want to communicate and meeting them where they are. I'll let Andrew tell the story. Was there a time when you were first starting out in this fractional space, and you can even go farther back if it makes sense too, where you were leaning on something other than trust to close a deal, get a gig, to accomplish something that wasn't trust oriented, and you fell flat on your face, and now looking back you realize why? Does anything ring a bell with that?
The hardest lesson I ever learned in my life was in my late 20s when I was working in an agency and I didn't understand. I had just come off of a couple of layoffs and I wasn't feeling particularly confident, but I was confident in my skills, but I was a little unsure of myself in terms of my employment stability. So I went into this job wanting to be just kill it, right? I just never wanted to be in the position again where someone might be able to decide they want to lay me off.
Yeah.
So I go in and I'm an account manager, right? So that means I have to work with designers and writers and all kinds of people to get projects done. And for the first 6 months, I was struggling. I was getting feedback that I was off-putting to some people, and that I was having trouble communicating with people. And I got to tell you, Chris, I wanted nothing more than to fit in. I had done anything to fit in just because I really wanted to be secure. And I kind of went through a bit of a crisis of confidence. And what I grew to realize was the irony of trying to prove to others what your value is. The impact it has is the opposite, right? The more someone wants to prove to you that you have value, the less it hits. And so what I had to learn was I got to stop taking myself so seriously, right? And I think that really bleeds into my marketing. It's like, I can't take my product so seriously that it's the be all end all of everything everyone wants. Instead, you need to show up with some humility and be like, and listen sometimes. Stop selling, right? Stop selling. Listen and help. And, realize that everyone wants to be the hero of their own story. You don't get to be the hero of everyone else's story. People want to be the hero of their own story. And as a marketer, my job is to help them find that. And that's what builds the forever connection.
When you don't have to put a mask on every single time you go out in public, and I use that word very loosely, life is a lot easier when you can just be yourself, whatever way, shape, form, or fashion that ends up being.
I wish I know too many people who've learned that so much earlier in life than I did. It took me longer. Although maybe it was harder fought. Maybe that's it. Maybe it was more of a cornerstone in who I am and who I've become, because it was such a hard fought learning. But as a result, and it's kind of informed the rest of my life. It's informing what I'm doing now. It's not about it. My job isn't about, or my life isn't about what I do or how much I make. It's really about the people that I've helped or the people I've let into my life. The rest of it is just, it's side hustle. Honestly, it's not what matters. It's not the destination. It's entirely the journey. You hear that all the time, right?
Totally.
The destination is the split second of you crossing the finish line and a tape breaking. The journey's the rest of it. And if all you do is spend your time on the milliseconds breaking through the tape, man, you've really, really condensed your life down into a few very fleeting moments.
How much of that facade that you were putting on was in an effort to please all the people around you? And this question is coming from a very big people pleaser in and of himself.
There's no doubt. Look, I've known I'm a dyed in the wool people pleaser and always have been. And I think it's because at the very end of the day, I knew that other people were responsible and had power over my future. And so, and when you feel that way, when you don't feel like you're in control of your own stuff, you feel like, okay, the best way I can protect myself is to keep everybody happy. And so consequently, you become incredibly sensitive. If you're someone who happens to be a little sensitive to the way other people view you or sensitive about your image, you're constantly on the lookout for every sign that, someone either, where's your score? How are you doing with certain people, right? And so there's no doubt in my mind. And to your point, I think when you're able to get rid of that, when you finally shed that part of yourself, and it's not one thing, it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen for the rest of your life. It's a practice, it's a discipline you try to employ. But the more you're able to shed that, the less you realize every person's opinion matters. It's not so much that you don't want to treat people with respect. You still hold true to your values. But when you realize you have to be satisfied with who you are, and it starts there, well, then by definition, you have to stop thinking about, well, what did that person think? Like, no, what did you think? Are you good with yourself? My marketing was the same way. The last place I worked, my CEO, great guy, but he was very hands off. And as a people pleaser, you're always wanting to be connected to that boss, right? You're always wanting to hear, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. And it just wasn't him. And it took me a long time and a lot of frustration and fear, insecurity, before I really had to force myself to say, hey, look, it's not about him. I mean, yes, he has the decision. If he wants to express it, he's the guy in charge. But I need to set some standards for myself. And those are the standards that end up mattering anyway. Again, I feel like I learned these things much later than other people in life. I feel like I'm the last one to know. But I figured that out. I was like, what matters is, what do I think? Now, fortunately in marketing, you also have metrics that can tell you what your audience thinks, right? You've got instant feedback that way. But all you can do is be who you are, the best you can be, and bring it every day. That's the answer. And the idea of trying to please everyone along the way, it is the biggest losing battle you've ever seen. I still respect people who want to do right by others. I know the intentions are good. Instead of trying to criticize people who do that, I really try to be a support to people like that and be like, you know what? I get where you're coming from. I know what you're feeling, but you know what? You get to be you. You have permission to be you, and you're the one who matters in this whole equation, not anyone else.
How did you slowly start shedding that over when you had that realization, you started to kind of go down this route of just being less people pleasy in general? What did you do?
There's a couple of things. One, it was born of anxiety, right? I mean, if we want to call it what it is, I was experiencing anxiety. So I got help for that, first of all. I talked to people. I diagnosed the problem first. I mean, we sometimes think it's all about what you do, but sometimes it's about how you think. And sometimes, so you need to get help from somebody who is outside of your brain and your perspective. I mean, that's what they call blind spots, right? You can't see what you can't see, but someone else can. So first of all, that was very helpful back there at the time of my life. Secondly, because my struggles seemed to be so much along the lines of communication, right? In other words, I'm communicating with these people, and despite my very best intentions, I mean the best intentions, I'm still having middling success. Some people don't like it. Some people, I'm not building the relationships that I'm dying to build, which is what you need in an agency setting. You need those relationships.
Yeah, totally.
So I went looking for research and reading that could help me make sense of this. I happened to find a book, and it was early 90s, and it was written by a woman named Linda McAllister. May she rest in peace. I've since learned she's passed away. She wrote a book called I Wish I'd Said That. And, it's one of those books where, people are like, oh, it categorizes people into certain things. You're this kind of a communicator. You're that kind of a communicator. But first of all, when I was reading through it, it made so much sense. I mean, I saw these things and I was like, oh, wow, this is really true. Some of the premises were, one, because there are different kinds of communication styles, people like to communicate the way they are communicated, they like to be communicated to the way they communicate, and vice versa. So totally. If you're someone who likes few details and likes the summary, you're going to talk that way. And it's going to feel to someone who doesn't talk that way like it's blunt. It's too straight from the hip, right? But the person who's doing that communication, they actually think they're showing you respect by doing that. It's because that's how they'd want to be communicated to. It's efficient, right? That the goal of, in this case, that's called the noble. The noble is the person who simply believes that the purpose of communication is the efficient and accurate exchange of data and information as quickly as possible. That's the way to go, and being honest about it. When you're someone who likes a lot of detail, who likes to process a lot of information before making a decision, you assume everyone else wants that too. And so you talk a lot, you tell them more, you do things, you act in ways that you think they want. But the fact is, they want something different. And if there's someone who believes in the whole purpose of communication is building a personal relationship, if you show up and start firing data at them, it is actually offensive to them. It's actually like, you don't give a crap about me. You just care about getting done whatever it is you want to get done. And I'm sure I'm not doing the book justice, but the thing it taught me, I mean, high level, was that because people communicate in different ways, I needed to start reading people differently. I needed to understand that the stories I was telling myself about why someone was communicating a certain way or what they wanted from me in my communication was all wrong. That instead, you have to meet people where they are. And that's what the communication styles really taught me was people don't all talk like you. They don't all think like you. Stop treating everyone like you and start listening.
Can you think of a time where you very intentionally swapped your preferred communication method with somebody that you were talking to, and you were able to hit a home run with them, even though it wasn't in your preferred style?
Absolutely. So apologies if I'm speaking to styles that people haven't read about, but one of the styles in the book is, so the style I reference, my very communicative style, is a Socratic, right? I'm a Socratic. I ask a lot of questions. It's all about the information. But the other style is what's called a reflective. And a reflective is that person that I mentioned for whom communication is all about the advancement of the personal relationship. Well, historically, I would show up in that person's cubicle and I would blast them with all that information and wonder why maybe I wasn't their favorite person. And I did all the talking, right? But what I learned were the people who are quiet, reserved, listening, Well, they were waiting for an invitation for me to show them that I cared about them, that I cared about what they thought. And so I quickly learned to identify. Frequently, they were the quiet people in the office, maybe the people who didn't speak as much in meetings, that instead they were always, they showed a lot of deference to others because they wanted to build a good relationship with those people. I immediately I showed up in their cubicle. Instead of starting with, hey, I'm working on this thing and I need your help. It changed my entire communication style with most people, but especially those individuals where I show up and say, hey, how are you doing? How are things going? Right? Sounds simple. Sounds absurdly simple. But when you realize you spend the first 30 seconds of that communication checking in with them and saying, hey, everything going okay today? Boy, I'll tell you, what happened? How was your weekend? I'll tell you, this happened to me. And I'm expressing to this individual, I care about them and I care about our relationship. That instantly opens the door to the rest of it. And it also reminds you, as much as I have disproved it today in all of my talking, that sometimes you have to stop. In fact, you frequently need to stop and listen and ask a question and solicit feedback from someone who maybe doesn't want to give it because they're afraid they'll offend you. If you don't do that, you end up bulldozing over someone without realizing it. You think they're loving the communication, but it's only because you're loving the communication, not because they are. I had to do that with a lot of artists I worked with were that way, where they were in here a lot of the time, and I needed to work with them on projects. It was very important that I expressed before we got into this thing you better design really well or the client's going to be mad, to, hey, we're on the same team. We like each other. And I want you to know I'm here for you regardless of what happens. So I don't know if that is that kind of the example you're looking for, but that's how it played out very immediately for me.
The question I want to look at today is, what would change in your relationships if you focused on understanding others' communication styles rather than trying to impress them? And I realized that at doing work stuff, that whenever there's communication struggles, for me, I tend to over-deliver on value. I pile it on as much as I possibly can to prove to the person on the other side, hey, this is worthwhile, this is good, look how easy I'm making your life. But how that value is communicated might actually be the crux of some potential problems. For example, one of the things I know that I'm not fantastic at is expressing gratitude. Most people who know me know that I'm a very thankful person in general, but I don't go over the top to express it. I'm very much a give you a handshake, pat you on the back, say thank you, and move on. I don't overdo any of that, and that's neither good nor bad. It's just my personality. But I know that over time, I've had to make adjustments with folks that I work with, whether that's been internal team members, whether that's clients, because some folks do understand more when that gratitude is expressed a little bit more thoroughly than a back pat and a handshake. And so I've had to morph and had to really think hard about, hey, I need to express gratitude here. What is that story that I'm going to craft so that it really lands with this particular person? And it's just a different communication style. It's a different preference. And so over the years, I've had to be very intentional about this to make sure that my efficiencies in giving thanks don't come across as not thankfulness. That's what Andrew got me thinking.